Hi, this is Sarah Harris, and welcome to my artist's memoir for EDCI 517 in the spring of 2019. I had to reach way back to think about my early years and my experience in the expressive arts. Um, I do remember pretty vividly really wanting to be like my mom during this time. My mom was very crafty. She was a flower arranger, she did cross stitching, and she made a lot of things for our home. And I remember wanting to do whatever she was doing at the time. I also really loved coloring. I colored and drew pictures almost constantly. I think one of my favorite belongings at the time was that 64 box of Crayola crayons with the sharpener. Those are things that I really remember from that time, but mostly just wanting to be like my mom and spend time with her making crafts. When I moved on to elementary school and got a little older, I joined 4 H. It was a really fun environment. I remember really loving my troop um, or club and, getting to know the girls and doing things like that. Um, One of the best things about being in 4 H was um, that I could finally try some of the things that my mom was doing at home. Was old enough and I could use those things as my 4 H projects. So I remember doing those plastic canvas crafts with the yarn and the big needle and making tissue box holders and things like that. I also tried my hand at cross stitch. I remember one winter making little magnets for all of my family. Um, I looked and looked for some of those, but I guess I don't have them anymore. One of the things I do have from that time period is this basket that's shown in the picture. I made that for a 4 H project when I was about 9 or 10. My bedroom at the time was pink and green, so it's kind of faded now, but you can kind of see the pink and green in there. I have fond memories of this being in my basement with my mom and doing the basket weaving in a big 5-gallon bucket because you had to soak the reeds and stuff. And I just remember feeling so proud and so happy that I could finally do things like my mom. And apparently felt so much so that I've kept this for 30 years. So pretty neat. Um, I also remember doing a lot of performances at the time, um, magic shows and dance routines and things, but I would only do them for my parents. I would sit my mom and dad in the living room and put on a show. I was pretty shy at the time, so I didn't want to do it for anybody else or take dance classes or anything like that, but I really wanted to perform. So that kind of brings me to my middle school experience where I finally got the nerve to put myself out there and try my hand at doing some kind of performance or dancing. And I joined the drill team of my middle school, and they would march with the band and do a little routine with their pom poms. Um, I desperately wanted to be on that team, and it wasn't a tryout situation. They let anybody on. But oh my goodness, I was so bad that I ended up having to carry the flag because I couldn't march and do the dance steps at the same time. At the time, it was devastating. I was feeling pretty left out and not feeling very confident in myself. And honestly, that experience really kind of drove me away from any other type of like athletics or any kind of other performance arts because I just didn't have confidence in myself. So, looking back and reflecting on that has been kind of uh, wild this week. Um, so when I moved into high school, I kind of switched my thinking a little bit, and I didn't mind the performance aspect anymore. I wasn't feeling shy. Was feeling uncertain about my athletic abilities, but I did join the speech and debate team. And I credit that for kind of getting me out of my shell, making me feel more confident in my public speaking abilities, and proud of my accomplishments. I came in second place in my debate division in my senior year for our state tournament. Um, I dabbled a little bit in some of the speech and monologue performances that you could do as far as expressive arts and things. And that was fun, but my focus really was on the debate team and being part of that team. And again, it kind of reminds me a little bit of going back to the 4 H, where I had a sense of belonging. I loved my teammates. I felt really safe with them, and we were very like-minded people, and that allowed me to kind of take some risks and put myself out there a little bit more. Also during high school, my friends and I kind of got into jewelry making, um, and you can see some of my uh, very old jewelry making examples in this picture. Also during high school, I learned how to crochet, another thing that my mom taught me. She was a knitter, but she thought maybe starting with crochet would be a good idea, and I still crochet to this day. When I went to college, I didn't really do much as far as the performance goes. I was pretty busy working and trying to support myself in college. So I did continue to crochet. One of the things I discovered about that activity and fiber art form in college was that I found it very relaxing and meditative almost, where I could do it without thinking about it. It kept my hands busy. It gave me something to do, and kind of allowed my mind to wander. I really gravitate towards projects for crocheting that don't follow a pattern, or such a simple pattern that it just repeats itself, where I can kind of lose myself in my thoughts and still work on my project. Someone once told me that it was called moving meditation, and I really identified with that. One of the other things I did as far as expressive arts in college was continue making jewelry. I kind of went through a hippie phase in college, which I think a lot of people do. And because I was so focused on supporting myself and paying rent and tuition and things, I would often make a bunch of jewelry, and my friends and I would take it to concerts in the area and walk around in the parking lot and sell our jewelry to try to make a little bit of side money in college. So that was fun. After college and moving on into adulthood, I kind of feel like I've gone a little bit full circle, where I have a lot of the same hobbies that my mom did. Maybe not exactly, but certainly making things for my home, and doing things for my son, just like my mom did for me. I really enjoy that. So I've taken lots of classes, painting classes and craft classes. This welcome sign is something I did recently, and it hangs in the entranceway to my house. Some of the other things that I've kind of carried on, like my mom did, was baking. I took some cake decorating classes, and one of the pictures shown here are some Lego cookies that I made for my son one year to take to school for his birthday. While I was pregnant with him, I experimented a little bit with quilling, which is paper art, which is in the bottom right-hand corner, that jungle picture. I made that for his nursery. And kind of expanding a little bit into the crafts and cake decorating, working in nonprofits, where I have a lot of years working in the zoo field. You have to be pretty creative with your resources. So one year, my husband decided, he's the director here at the zoo, that he wanted to do a Super Bowl prediction with our grizzly bears here at the zoo. So he asked me if I could come up with a recipe that was grizzly bear appropriate and decorate it with the logos of the two teams for the Super Bowl. Um, and I started doing that. I got a little creative in the kitchen and made a banana cake with peanut butter frosting and piped the logos of the Super Bowl teams on the cakes with Nutella. Um, we are on the 7th year of doing that project now. A couple years ago, because of some of the national attention that the pick got in the media, the Food Network magazine called me and asked me if they could interview me and um, asked me to send the recipe to them. So I did, and pictured on the left is the article that they wrote about my um, Super Bowl cakes, which I think is kind of fun, and it was kind of a neat moment for me. As far as reflection goes, this project was really fun. I enjoyed kind of walking down memory lane and searching through some of my stuff to find pictures of things that I had made from long ago. Um, I feel like I can help my students do um, the same thing as their teacher. One of the biggest things that I learned from this project was that I like to try new things and I like things that create joy in my life. So maybe not the drill team, but crocheting and cake decorating. And I think that that experience will allow me to be a little bit more sympathetic and encouraging to my students to help them find those things that help them find joy. As far as future teaching goes, I do have some specific examples of how I can support my students with arts integration in my classroom. The first thing I can do is learn with them. I certainly have thought a lot about all the different things that I've tried and am willing to try more. One of the things that I would like to help my students do is some digital art. Using that medium is new to me. I'm sure that it isn't for them, and they'd be a lot more adaptive to it than me, but I'm willing to try it. And I think that's something that I can support my students in. I would also like to help them find something that they can find the same comfort in as I do in crocheting, like relaxing and meditating. I think it's so important, and it really does do good for your emotions and some just some social. You can relax and do that kind of stuff. Um, some professional development things that I would like to work on. I don't have a lot of experience with Writer's Workshop, and I think that that could really help me support the students who gravitate towards language arts. So I would like to work a little bit on taking some professional development in Writer's Workshop. As part of this master's degree journey that I'm on, because my undergraduate degree is in science, I had to take a few art and music classes as prerequisites to some of these master's classes, and I would like to continue to do that to build my background knowledge. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, I think taking some professional development and learning a little bit about some digital mediums that I can help my students with. iMovie, my son is really into making the animation with Legos. What is that called? Anyway, he makes little movies with his Legos and things like that. So I think that the stop motion animation, learning more about that, I think would be really appealing for my students and just give them a different avenue for expressing themselves. Well, thank you for joining me on this journey down memory lane. And I'd love to see other people's work.